Hello, welcome. I should mute myself and all my devices, right? So nothing is distracting. Um, Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm really excited to get started with NaNoWriMo. I was had my YouTube open. Make sure it's working. All right. I'm always like nervous about lives, like everything's gonna just explode. All right. Cool. Let's get started. So yes, I've done NaNoWriMo several times before. I've won a couple times. I didn't actually log in to check yet. I haven't made my new novel yet on the website, but that's the next step. Maybe we'll go over that one day too. So yeah, everyone say hi in the chat so I can see who's here and let me know, have you done Nano before? Have you won? Have you lost? What are your feelings about it? I've got mixed feelings. I like the challenge of having to do it all in, 1 month, getting a good first draft, or even if it's not the whole first draft, part of a first draft. And it's good practice to get, like, writing every day, writing a certain number of words every day has been super helpful for me as a writer, so hi, Leslie, other Leslie, IE Leslie. Yeah, there's not that many YEs. There are a few of us, but having to suffer through people who go Leslie, how to say my name. It's always fun. So today we are going to just start with how to develop your story idea, so kernel baby idea to a vision statement in this session. And over the course of the month, we'll do more world building, plotting, character development stuff. Cool. So the other Leslie, love Nano since 2015 and lots of unfinished products. Yes, I've had lots of unfinished projects also. I tried many years ago, didn't finish. And not sure if you're going to do it. Yeah, that's totally valid. It could be, you don't have to do Nano. Prepping before you write is always helpful, I think. All right, let me see if I can get myself together. I want to do some slides. So we're going to walk through. I have this Story Seed workbook. We'll just walk through the questions. You can get the workbook if you want. You don't have to, but this is kind of the basis of my system and how I think about going through and getting your story together. There is a link, I believe, in the description, yeah, for the checklist. There's a free world building checklist. If you download the checklist, you'll get a discount if you want to go ahead and get the Story Seed workbook, but totally up to you. We're going to walk through the majority of it together. Leslie asks, anyone watch Sarah Cannon? I love Sarah Cannon, and she has a whole Preptober thing with her notebooks and her planners, and she's gotten, over the years, she's done a lot of great Nano work and Preptober stuff too. So another great resource is Sarah Cannon's YouTube channel, Her Breathings, and getting on to her newsletter. First Nano for Sarah, that's awesome. Yeah, and juggling Nano with family, with work, with everything is tough. And sometimes you get a few days, a few weeks, and it falls apart. That's okay. Give yourself grace. So the idea that I have for Nano this year that I would like to try to draft is something that I've thought about for a while. Um, and I actually started writing a little bit a while ago, but it was years ago. And I'm completely rebuilding the story idea from the ground up. So if there the workbook you can get like it's 70% off if you sign up for the world building checklist. So lpen.co/checklist. That link is in the description. The checklist is free, and if you do that, then I think you can get the workbook for $10 if you're interested. Otherwise, just play along. All right, so we will start with the beginning, which is it basically goes over 5 questions of story. So developing your story seed is like a what, why, where, who, and how situation. And we'll go over those. This is kind of how I break it down and how I think about it. So basically, the first thing is brainstorming your idea. What do you know right now? Like you haven't written the book yet. You might have a good idea of the idea. Like it could be pretty well formed in your mind, or maybe it's not so well formed. Mine is blotches. It's not highly well formed. It is just some basic ideas. So, describing in a few sentences the spark, the premise, the idea of the story you have in mind. Sometimes it's a prompt. And I was going to do this in whimsical, actually write live and just sort of brainstorm so we can kind of all do it together and see how it goes. And obviously, we're going to spend more time on it when you have time, but getting it done, one of the reasons I wanted to do this was sort of force myself to do it, force myself to like take time and actually get it done. So, what do you want to write a story about? I'm going to find something. I like to make my notes in just a text file. I'm going to share my screen. Um, 1 second. Okay. So this is the first question. What is the story actually about? I'm just using Whimsical, which is sort of an online. It's whiteboarding. It's note taking. It is. I like it a lot for various things. I'm trying to actually put it over here so I can see both things. Wait. Okay. So my particular story, Spark, is trying to figure out how to. Like, what you want to do is brainstorm everything. So like whatever you know about your idea. So I know that things that I do know are trying to figure out how to actually put it into words. Okay, there are a band of warriors, and they're called omens. And this is basically building off a world that I created in a short story or several short stories that I would like to dive into. So it's a fantasy romance, and that is something that I know. So I was thinking put that down. Fantasy romance. We're going to talk about genre and diving deeper into the genre. Spring asks, "Will I upload it later?" Yes, this will be on YouTube after the live is done. So you have to drop it off if you're coming in later. Welcome to the future. I hope that you get something out of this. What else do I know? I know I want to have. So it's a romance. There's going to be the male character, the female character is going to discover that she's a supernatural creature. And that's the basics. That's sort of archetypal. It is, part of the genre, I think. It's a trope, maybe finding out that you're a supernatural creature. There's other elements that I kind of have in mind, but I'm not sure about. So I want it to be a love story, and then kind of love story besides this. It is the magic system. I don't have those ideas. So if I was going to break this down into like a simple sentence, what's the story about? It's about a young woman who discovers a magical world and that she is a supernatural creature and falls in love with a warrior. That is probably the simplest way to go about talking about that story. Let me know if you have any questions as I go along. So, okay, I will put that into an actual sentence. Discovers a secret world of supernatural creatures and that she is one of them. That's basically so that is the beginning of it. Let's go back to the other questions. The inspiration. Where did this idea come from? What inspired it? When you look back at the finished product, you still have a record, motivation, or the spark. I found that actually to be the whole point of this session, getting to eventually we're going to get to a vision statement together because maybe if you're doing NaNoWriMo, could be November 5th, could be November 15th, or the 25th. There's going to be a point where why am I writing this? And what is it about? And so as you build the ideas, creating touchstones to remind yourself why you care, what you're going to fall out of the story, maybe not in the first page, realizing there's always a point where you fall out of the story. And so I like to capture the inspiration so that I can hopefully drop a lot of love. So inspiration behind the idea. This is an older idea for me. So I had it. And I've had that happen before. Dream, and I woke up and I wrote the first draft. So not super helpful, but it was a dream I had, and it was about this kind of gothic house, one of those almost Addams Family style houses on a hill that looks really scary, and there were these warriors in there. And this woman who was a maid in a hotel was hired to clean this house, and that was the original genesis. So I don't know if I'm keeping that. I like that. That's always spoken to me. Like she's a maid. It speaks to the idea of universal fantasies where maybe she's not going to become a princess or a queen. I don't know exactly where she ends up, but she comes from, a life of hard manual labor, gets hired to a better job than the hotel job as housekeeper for this house. And in the course of the story, discovers this magical world and all these wondrous things, and there's a sense of wonder and magic and awe. So my inspiration is the dream, but also like having a story that gives a sense of wonder and awe. So all of us are going to have different ways of coming about our idea. If anyone wants to drop in the comments, if you have an idea of what now, what was the inspiration, it is always cool to hear. If published or if you're pre-published, when people read your books and ask you about them, the first question you're often going to get is, where does your inspiration come from? Where does this idea come from? So, another reason to get this down is you might forget over the course of writing the book and falling out of love with it and then falling back into it. So having a place there where you know that you can write it down at the beginning. Uh-oh, the sound's going in and out. Is the sound going out for anyone else too? I can check my settings, make sure the right microphone is on. Okay. It might have been. Okay. Let me know if it is anybody. I think sorry about that. But yeah, let me know if it's better now. I think that the might have been speaker was set to be the microphone, which happens on if it's still happening, I can put in my headphones so I know where they are. Or I can just switch to something else. So yeah. Is this at all better? I guess I should be talking so you can actually hear if it's better or not. Let me know if it's better, if it's still cutting in and out, and I will switch to a different. Can't tell the difference. Let me just go ahead and switch just in case. It might be a little lower, but hopefully it will. All right, mics, and it probably will sound different because it's not the one right in front of me. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, guys. So, if anyone wants to drop their inspiration in the comments for their story, and just it doesn't have to be the actual story, just kind of where it came from, the idea. A lot of times, music. Several stories have been inspired by songs, by other movies. So, Dragon Maiden asks, "How do you organize it if you have two ideas?" Um, if you have two story ideas or two inspirations, you mean? If you have two story ideas, I think you would go through this process with both. If you, so kind of maybe a day and do one and take a day and do the other and then see which one speaks to you. Yeah, because I go through multiple ideas and often you're going to have a whole list of ideas. Like I keep a notebook and kind of figure out which one is calling to you. There's usually one that you're more interested in or just has more energy behind it. I have a lot of story ideas, and I went with this one because it's kind of at the back of my mind. I keep thinking about it. Often there will be one that you just keep thinking about. And as we go through the rest of this, there's some other considerations. If they're both equal in every way, then we're going to talk about some other ways that you might be able to decide that might help you. So, Patricia Pete, inspiration from a meme, gave several ideas. Memes are great too, yeah. Um, a pre-made book cover, that's cool. So you can actually have the cover in advance. I love that. Coming from watching Once Upon a Crime. Very cool. Cool. Yay. All right. We will move on to the next page. Still part of this, what excites you about the idea? What is important to you about it? And is this a seed, a character, a world, or something else? So I'm going to go back to my document and what excites me about this idea. I'm going to switch the camera in a second. This is also another way to figure out which of multiple ideas that you want to choose. So not just thinking about your own excitement, but thinking about what is important. So what excites me? What is important? So for me, it's hard. I don't know if I can put it into words, but the thing that's exciting me about the idea is the chance to, I want to do like a grumpy sunshine, which is my favorite trope. So I think what excites me is the chance to explore my favorite trope. Because I want her to be sunshine, and of course the warrior is grumpy. And what is important about it, I always, if anyone of you listen to my podcast, I talk a lot about leading on the page. Even if you're writing something that's going to be fun and an escape, it doesn't have to be like a serious, heavy book. I still feel the need to put some of myself into it. That keeps me interested during the course of writing the entire book. And writing a book is not easy. It is very difficult, whether you're doing NaNoWriMo or not. So I try to find something that's important about it. And the thing that was speaking to me this week that might change in the future is something about a character dealing with depression and then battling that or finding their way out of that or finding, moments of joy in that and working that idea into a story that is still lighthearted, is still a romance, is still giving you that sense of wonder and awe, but also has a little bit of, like it has some claws in reality. So I think that I'm going to explore the idea of a character with depression and see where that leads me. But again, I'm not sure if it's going to work, but we'll see. I just kind of follow where the inspiration, where the ideas come, and that's an idea that came to me. Okay, 1 second to turn that off. All right, next page, and just let me know if you have any questions in the comments about anything that we're talking about. Is the story, seed, situation, a character, a world, or something else? I break most ideas into a situation, a character, or a world, and that can help me figure out all the things that I don't know. So what kind of story seed is this? So this seed is basically a situation, I think. It's if I'm going with the idea that somehow I've got this hotel maid who gets hired by these warriors who she doesn't know are supernatural warriors. That's a situation. The conflict, the character growth is going to come out of that situation. So I'll be asking questions about, okay, what are the type of characters that are a part of this? What makes that premise? What will make it interesting to readers? What makes it interesting to me? If your story seed like is a cover, is an image, is it an image of maybe a character or the world, like the design of it is inspiring, situation of a television show, whatever's happening in the meme, is that a character that you want to follow and figure out their story? That's sort of the basis of this. So yeah, mine is a situation, and I have to really think about, conflict is the basis of the story. What are the conflicts inherent in this discovery of a supernatural world? We know that they're trying to keep it hidden, yet they're bringing this outsider into their midst. And the band of warriors actually know that my heroine is a supernatural creature. And it's the question I have is, they can't tell her, what are the rules? Why doesn't she know? Are they prohibited from telling her, yet they're bringing her in the house? Lots of questions coming to my mind. And usually I would find a way to capture any questions as I'm going through the beginning of the process. So I keep everything basically a text file. And I just start writing down these questions, depending on where you are in your story development process. you might have more answers than I do. You might have fewer answers. And if you're struggling with two ideas, maybe list them both out and see which idea you have more questions and which idea you have more answers for, and that could be another way to figure out which way you're going to go. Okay, this is small, but the reasons. Why do you want to write this story? Why do you want to add it to your body of work? This is another sort of philosophical type question where you're going to spend at least a month on this if you're doing Nano, and then more than that because Nano is first draft. It's not going to be polished. It's not going to be ready for anyone to read, except maybe an editor, maybe, but probably you need to read it again. So we're talking weeks, months, sometimes longer to write these books. And I think that this is just another thing to help you start strong at the beginning with the foundation so that when it gets tough, when you fall out of love with the story, when it doesn't make sense to you anymore and you want to give up, you come back and be like, okay, why did I want to write this? More so than the excitement and the inspiration, just like if you have other books that you've published or this is your first one, what makes this the right one for now, I'm going to assume that you want to eventually get your book published. It's fine to write for yourself, but we're just going to go for that. And yeah, so I'm thinking about why do I want to write this story? It gets into questions of theme, and I'm kind of a theme. I don't want to say theme first because I don't always know the theme up front, but I do think about it as I'm going along, and a lot of times it takes writing the first or second draft to figure out the theme. So in my case, I want to write this particular story, and I want it to be fun and a little bit light. I know I said I'm going to go with depression. I'm going to make that work somehow. It's going to balance out. I feel like I can do it. I have confidence in myself. But I just turned in a book last week that was more ambitious, not heavy, but it was dealing with some heavy topics. And also in that book, I've been trying to inject some lightness. And now I just want to have a little bit more fun. I want to play around a little bit more. So Hippie Soul Child asks, do we have to use a theme? You do not have to. Some writers don't have any idea of what their theme is. The book can be on the shelf and they're like, you tell me, I don't know. It can be useful. I found it to be helpful to think about that, but at the beginning may not be the right time for you. Maybe it's much later in the process. Maybe it's at the very end when you look back and you're doing your final read-throughs. And you see, oh, wait, that's what I was talking about. It took me a few books being written and published to recognize my themes and to really understand the thing I'm always talking about. And one of the things that goes through my books that I've recognized is usually they're about the main character. I'm usually writing about a woman, it's a Black woman, who is trying to find her place in the world, trying to find where she fits in, find her family, whether it's a found family or, whatever. And so I think that's going to be part of this book too. And I'm excited about that. Brittany Mellon, Chelsea is joining the chat. Welcome. Glad to have you. So we have Dragon Maiden says their story is a situation, a spooky Regency romance. That sounds pretty cool. I love that. So yeah, I want to think about my theme, and it's going to be along the same lines as the other themes, just coming at it in a different direction. Uh-oh. I don't know why the sound is coming out. I think I have a strong connection. Sorry about that, y'all. I will soldier on and hopefully the sound will level out. I think it's I don't know if that's making a difference. Okay. Oh, okay. So I'll just move. I'll try to talk louder. I was at a conference. When I get excited, it cuts. I'm probably just like stuttering. All right. So then is the reflection. And this is a whole page in the workbook that is too long to reproduce here. But essentially, why is this your story to tell? And I think that it's worth everyone thinking a little bit about that. Why, not just why you want to tell it, but why is this your story to tell? Is it characters? And I don't believe that people only tell stories about characters who look like that or anything like that. But when you're straying too far away from that, it is worth asking, is there someone else better suited to tell the story. I'm generally writing stories about Black women, but they are not me. And so even when you're writing a story about someone whose identity or demographically matches you, it's not memoir. We are writing characters who've gone through different situations. And it is worth just taking a moment to say, okay, what am I doing here? Yeah, just basically, why is this my story? So I feel like in this situation, um, it's just something that speaks to me. I feel like I can create a cast of characters that will do the story justice. I want to dive into different topics and, like I said before, kind of ground it in reality and in things that are relatable to the reader and tell a fantasy romance that is filled with wonder. All right, here is genre. So knowing your genre up front can be super helpful. It is, once again, assuming everyone is trying to get their story published, whether it's traditional or self-published, knowing the genre is going to be important regardless. And knowing it up front will help you in a lot of ways. So researching your genre and your subgenre, um, and being able to say where, when it gets on the Amazon bestseller list, you're going to manifest that, right? Which category is it going to be in? Um, Written in melanin, yeah, that's a very good point. It's a huge question, and it can help avoid major missteps because if you can't identify the category now, you're not going to be able to identify it later, chances are. And when it comes to either you publishing it or trying to get a publisher to, trying to convince a publisher that there's a lot of people who want to read this, they need to put it on a bookshelf. They need to put it in an Amazon category. So take a look through the Amazon categories. Go and look through the bestsellers. You can kind of scroll down and just get an idea. If it is a mashup of many things, it can be in multiple categories. Finding comps ahead of time can be also helpful. Comps are comparable titles, which are what other books are like yours. So your book is unique and special, yes, but readers need to know that it's kind of like this and they'll like it because they like this other book, even if it's very much on the surface level. So my last book, The Monsters We Defy, historical fantasy, I didn't I wasn't necessarily targeting it was historical fantasy heist. So I could have comps that were fantasy heists, and that were like fantasy heists and historical fantasies. This one, fantasy romance, there's a lot of comps. I know where it's going to fit on the shelves. I don't know exactly what the creatures are. I haven't quite decided. So if it's werewolves, vampires, angels, there's categories for certain creatures. Welcome, everyone new who's arrived. And yeah, so definitely take a few minutes to, if you haven't been on the Amazon bestsellers list before, familiarize yourself with it. So, question: how would you suggest classifying a book that could fit into multiple genres? That is a good question. I think that because you can call it what it is. Is it science fantasy? That is a thing. Is it, cozy fantasy is a newer subgenre. It's being called that recently. I think where there used to be just cozy mysteries. So there's mashups. Is it science fiction romance? Those things are coming together. So you can say, pick your two genres: romantic suspense plus mystery. Right? That's how it goes together. But I don't know, other two genres that you would mash up where you can call it that. And then if you're self-publishing, so you would choose all of the genres that it applies to. That becomes a little harder for traditional because they can't always understand that. And that's one of the great things about self-publishing, because you can kind of mash things up and communicate it to your readers. So it's like, this book from genre A and this book from genre B, and then maybe genre C. And like if you liked these three books or one of these three books, then check out my mashup. That would be my suggestion. I would love to see the genre set coffee mug. That sounds very cool. Yeah, because staying in one genre sometimes is boring. I mean, we're creative, we have a lot of ideas. And sometimes, if your readers are following you for your voice and your writing style. There, there are a certain number of them will follow you, but you cross genres and switch genres. And that's one reason to do it so that you can stay flexible and not always boxed in. And yeah, the category changes on Amazon. They recently changed the category system, so that can help to communicate what your genre is. So the next thing is planning for reader joy. I like to ask myself, why will my reader enjoy the story? Put myself in their shoes. Like I have to write for me and make sure that I'm writing a story that I love and that I'm really happy with, but I do want other people to read it. And so thinking about that at the beginning allows you to incorporate things like universal fantasies. So if you're not familiar, Theodore Taylor has a great book. It is called Seven Figure Fiction. Um, I could find the link. And it's all about universal fantasies and the fact that people read for, like, you think about why you read. Why does a particular book blurb make you click? Why? And a lot of times it's because the things, it's piquing your interest in some kind of way. Like if someone gives me a Cinderella story, no matter what the genre is, it's a high likelihood that I will at least read the first, free chapters. And I will download the sample and see if I like it because I love Cinderella stories. It goes beyond tropes, like it includes tropes. I love enemies to lovers. I love fake fiance in terms of like romance. And I love in fantasy a character who discovers they have some sort of legacy, whether they are a secret queen or princess or king or secretly magical or something like that. So what do your readers want from this type of story? If I'm writing a fantasy romance, there's lots of different styles that I could be writing. And I'm going to choose a style and then sort of try to figure out why people like that. Why do I like it? And then number 9 says, all of my readers don't expect to send them tears. I love making readers cry too. And I like keeping them up all night. So I'm thinking about when it comes to the actual writing, later in the process, how do I make sure that they keep turning the pages and they don't get any sleep? So initial thoughts of why a reader, for the story that I'm building, why will they enjoy the story? I'm thinking about, I'm going to create a magic system for this, or a system of powers for these warriors. And I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I want it to be cool. I want the readers to really sink into it. I want them to follow my heroine through this journey as she is exploring, this world, as the world is reveals to her. Maybe it is a little bit of a mystery. I'm kind of going back and forth between it being like a gothic fantasy romance where, she gets in this house when she's hired to be the housekeeper. And as she snoops around, sneaking into places she's not supposed to be, she discovers things. That's one version of it. The other version of it is more of a cozy fantasy romance, which is opposite end of the spectrum. And although it could be very similar, she's still sneaking around trying to find things, but the tone is different. I don't know the tone yet, and that's going to be something I have to work out as I'm doing this planning process, and maybe even when I'm writing, because I may or may not be able to figure out the tone until my fingers hit the keyboards and I'm actually writing. All right, so reader joy. I think the readers will like either way. There's plenty of examples of books out there in a sort of a gothic style where it's a little spooky, it's a little like darker, or like the bright technicolor cozy fantasy where similar things are happening, but the vibe is just different. And then the vision statement. So a vision statement takes everything we've been kind of talking about and creates a statement that helps you when the writing gets tough. That's sort of I'm just underscoring that over and over again because it gets tough and sometimes frequently. But yeah, if you write it out now, you can come back to your story's vision statement and have some place to go when you want to quit. But you're not going to quit. I hope you don't quit. So let's try to craft a vision statement for what we've been talking about. So my vision statement is basically kind of just It starts with, I want to write a story. I want to write a story about a young woman um, who enters a magical world, or who not just enters a magical world, but is like taken from her life of drudgery. It's a Cinderella thread in it. So into this magical world with these powerful, mysterious leaders. So a woman who is taken from her life of drudgery into a magical world full of mystery and wonder, and discover something important about herself and her origin. And then one more thing, I do want it to kind of be grounded. So I want readers to sink into this world, but also whatever this theme is, to sort of connect them to give them hope. Yeah, I think I want like this story to be very hopeful and yeah, make people feel good. So I want readers to feel hopeful after reading it, something like that. And I can kind of come back over the course of planning and as we get into plotting and characters and refine the vision statement. But this is just something that I've actually put into my Scrivener document and come back to over and over again to say, okay, am I doing this? Am I creating the sense of wonder? Am I creating a sense of hope by the end of the story? That probably means I have to make the dark moment, the all is lost, really difficult so that I want the reader not to know how they're going to get out of it. And then when they get out of it, it's like, yes, it's amazing. You have this catharsis. Those are some of the best kinds of books, in my opinion. So we've gotten to the vision statement. That was the goal for tonight. Let me know if you have any questions about anything we've done so far. Again, if you download the free world building checklist, you can get a big discount, like 70% off the Stories workbook if you would like to. If you're interested in that, that is at lpen.co/checklist. The link should be in the description also. But so what are we doing on Wednesday? For those of you who are going to join us on Wednesday, that is a good question. I've forgotten. Let me check. All right, story world. Oh yeah, we're going to start in on the story world and brainstorming what is happening in story world. How many of y'all, if you want to put in the chat, are doing something speculative, fantasy, science fiction, and how many are doing more realistic or historical? If you already know your general genre of time period, pop it in the chat and that will help me focus, because world building is important regardless of your genre, regardless of whether you're doing fantasy, sci-fi, horror, contemporary, historical, all of that stuff. I'm going to be creating a fantasy world. I'm still deciding. There's one version of it where it was more in our world with a fantasy overlay, but I think I would love to, since I've already played around in this world in some short stories, I want to go back and build a new world. I love world building, so any excuse to build a new world. Let's see. Have you ever designed a map of your story? Absolutely. I have done several maps. So my first series, Earthsinger Chronicles, I created the map initially. Initially I drew it by hand, and then I did a Photoshop tutorial on how to create a map. And eventually I hired a professional map maker. And then this book that is coming out next year that I just turned in last week, it takes place in our world, but in a small town. And I really wanted a map of the town in the book. So this one is with a traditional publisher, so they are taking care of it. And I think there's only 2 maps. I don't think I've done a map for, I've done maps that I haven't published, like maps for me. But maps are a lot of fun. Fantasy maps are cool. I'm digging all of your genres. This looks really cool. A Regency romance with no research. Yeah, I've been in historical fantasy the past couple of books, and I'm researched out. I love research, but I need a break. So that's another reason that I would like to personally do a fantasy world. These sound awesome. Cool. Well, thank you all so much for joining me, and I hope to see you all next time. This will be up. I will email the replay for anyone who had to leave, or if you'd like to rewatch it. And there's no other last minute questions. I'll say goodnight. And yeah, if you feel free to email me, hello@lpenelope.com. It's on my website. And yeah, have a great week. Thanks so much for coming, and I'll talk to you later.